Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. Day 362 of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Today, U.S. President Joe Biden made an unannounced visit to Kyiv, where he met with President Volodymyr Zelensky. During a joint press conference, Biden announced further aid to Ukraine, as he said freedom is priceless and worth fighting for. The arrival of U.S. President Joe Biden in Kyiv just before the anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a major challenge for security services. President Biden announced the transfer of another $500 million military aid package to Ukraine. Its scope will include munitions for HIMARS and Javelin systems. The U.S. leader added that a new U.S. sanctions package on Russia will be announced later this week.
Economies of the world will impose unprecedented costs that are squeezing Russia's economic lifelines. Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems.
During the bilateral talks, President Volodymyr Zelensky raised the issue of long-range weapons supplies. This conversation brought our joint victory closer. I emphasize this year will be crowned with our victory. This unjustified criminal aggression of Russia against Ukraine has united the whole world. Right now, the fate of the world order is being decided in Ukraine, and we, together with President Biden and our allies, must do absolutely everything possible to ensure that the democratic order I mentioned wins this historic battle. The U.S. president's visit to Kyiv is historically significant. The U.S. is behind its allies and not really afraid of authoritarian states. I would specify, in a country where there is a war going on, over which the United States does not have full control in terms of airspace and land operations, because U.S. presidents have appeared in conflict areas before. But here we can see from the example of Iraq, there was a completely different situation, where the Americans even had dominance in the airspace. On my way out the door, I looked at Twitter, and there I saw some tweets. I have several Ukrainian friends who knew something, but were only able to tell about it when they knew officially. It has been kept very well under wraps other than speculation. It seems to me that this is the only way that the U.S. president's visit to Kyiv was able to take place in this way. We know that he had to travel some land route from the Polish border. We didn't really know that he was in Poland. According to the U.S. intelligence community, Chinese arms and munitions may soon support Russian forces in Ukraine. In addition, diplomatic relations between Beijing and Washington are strained, due in part to the downing of a Chinese balloon that crossed U.S. airspace in early February.
That China is considering providing lethal support to Russia in its aggression against Ukraine. And I made clear, as President Biden has, almost from day one with President Xi, that would have serious consequences in our own relationship.
China's foreign ministry stresses that Beijing has so far not taken a position on either side of the war in Ukraine, and that diplomatic efforts are leading to a lasting peace rather than escalation. However, the Chinese foreign ministry spokesman's statement about the independence of China's decision is ambiguous. The United States cannot dictate its terms to China. We will never succumb to this pressure. Chinese-Russian relations are outside Washington's sphere of influence. China maintains a position on the Ukraine conflict. We encourage negotiations and a lasting peace. Meanwhile, a Foreign Affairs Council meeting was held today in Brussels at the level of heads of diplomacy of European Union countries, with the participation of Moldovan Foreign Minister Nicu Popescu. Poland is represented by Foreign Ministry Chief Zbigniew Rau.
Do we provide quick arms to Ukraine, especially ammunition? You know that the most important pressing issue today for the Ukrainian army is to have a continuous flow of ammunition of 155 caliber, also 152, but 155 is the most important one.
Meanwhile, the Russians are shortening the distance separating their positions from Bakhmut. Russian troops continue their assault north of the city and are trying to break through Ukrainian defenses in the Luhansk region as well. The situation looked and looks serious for the reason that we are dealing with tactics of flooding the Ukrainian troops with force, with living masses. Russian troops, despite the fact that they are very often mobilized troops or troops recruited from prisoners, are not well equipped. Nuclear exercises began in Russia today. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the announcement of the maneuvers had a clear purpose. It was to thwart Joe Biden's visit to Europe and thus to weaken Ukraine. After completing an unannounced visit to Ukraine, Joe Biden took a train to Poland. The key moment of the U.S. president's visit to Poland is expected to be tomorrow's speech in the Kubicki Arcades of the Royal Castle, which is expected to begin at 5:30 p.m. According to the U.S. Embassy's announcement, it will be a message to all the Polish people. According to the original plan, Air Force One with the American president on board was not scheduled to land at Warsaw-Kęcie Airport until tomorrow morning. However, due to the unexpected visit of the U.S. leader to Kyiv, the plan has changed. As for the organizational issues of the president's visit, due to sensitive security issues here, unfortunately, I cannot disclose details. This is the U.S. President Joe Biden's second visit to Poland in the space of less than a year, the earlier one having taken place in late March, a month after the Russian invasion of Ukraine began.
And this is a historic inflection point in terms of the American-Polish relationship because it speaks to a raising of our collaboration.
President Biden will address the Polish nation tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. right here in the Kubicki Arcades in the gardens of the Royal Castle in Warsaw. The speech will be about Polish-American relations and the war that the war criminal Putin has declared on Ukraine, has declared on Europe, and all parts of the democratic world. Any such public action by such an important politician is a symbol. Biden's very presence, already abstracting from what he will say, is significant. On Wednesday, Joe Biden will attend the extraordinary summit of the Bucharest Nine. The U.S. president will meet with the leaders of the 9 Central and Eastern European countries. The main topic of discussion is expected to be the strengthening of NATO's eastern flank. This is an idea to strengthen the countries of Central Europe and create a region here for development and security functioning. During the U.S. president's visit, key decisions for Polish defense may be made. I, for one, hope that after the visit, we will learn that there will be more American troops in Poland, along with equipment. With these threats that we realistically have from Belarus, where we have de facto more and more troops of the Russian Federation. According to international affairs expert Jarosław Guzy, it is in the coming days that a decision will be made on even more support not only for Poland, but also for our eastern neighbors. As a matter of fact, we can say that it is a foregone conclusion. It is only a matter of time when, in addition to tanks, there will be missiles, long-range drones, or there will also be aircraft, Western modern ones that will be able to help Ukraine not only in defense, but also in counteroffensive. The White House has confirmed that President Joe Biden will once again be staying at the Marriott Hotel, which means in the very center of Warsaw. This will involve considerable traffic disruptions, but not only. Let us use public transportation. Subways, trams, these modes of transportation will help us move safely and quickly around Warsaw during this time. Certainly, there may also be restrictions on pedestrian traffic in several places, and this is also very important information for any of the people who will be in Warsaw at this time. The exclusions will affect several districts of Warsaw. We are talking primarily downtown, the Old Town, but also the area directly from the airport towards the city center. President Joe Biden will be in Poland until Wednesday, and the first traffic and pedestrian obstructions in the capital will begin tonight and will last until Thursday. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is on a visit to Warsaw. She met with Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki in the afternoon, and a meeting between the head of the Italian government and President Andrzej Duda was scheduled for the evening. Today's visit is part of the government's ongoing diplomatic offensive. Giorgia Meloni is visiting our country for the first time since taking office as Italy's prime minister on the 22nd of last October. Italy for Poland is the second largest economic partner in Europe. I am glad that Italy, although distant from Russia, from Ukraine, understands so perfectly what is happening there. They feel how important this is for the future of Europe. This is what Giorgia and I explained to each other and agreed on a while ago. Some people have succumbed to various illusions and still do all the time in Europe, but the Italian government and our Polish government look at these problems identically. We are supplying weapons together. We talked about more arms deliveries to Ukraine so that peace would come as soon as possible, so that stability would return, so that we could develop normally. From the very beginning of the invasion, we supported Ukraine financially, militarily, and through humanitarian aid. To the full absolute extent, Ukraine knows that it can count on us, and Poland knows that it can count on us. So another reason why I'm here is to remind and emphasize that in the face of the Ukrainian conflict, Poland is the border, and it is we who have to thank Poland for the exceptional absolute work it is doing for Ukraine. Giorgia Meloni's invitation to Warsaw is part of a broader diplomatic offensive that Polish head of government Mateusz Morawiecki and President Andrzej Duda have been conducting for several days. The aim of the meetings with the country's leaders is to urge increased and accelerated supplies of ammunition to Ukraine. Previous efforts by Polish diplomacy have proved successful. It was Poland that first proposed giving Ukraine Patriot missile systems or sending German Leopard tanks as part of an international coalition of countries. Ukraine needs very fast, very strong support in terms of military equipment. Well, who else but Ukraine has been courting the West for a year, and now when the moment is important? It is Poland that has taken the burden of talks with Western European partners. This is all so that those countries which have large production capacities when it comes to armaments, such as Germany and France, so that they too feel obliged to provide this assistance, so that they don't wriggle, don't slow down all these activities. The Italian Prime Minister's declarations about providing further forms of support to Ukraine show that the narrative of the Polish opposition, which accused the Italian government of favoring Russia, is false. Giorgia Meloni was one of those politicians in Italy that supported military aid to Ukraine, despite the doubts of a large part of other politicians. Prime Minister Meloni, we also have President Biden. You can see that the war in Ukraine and this proximity to the anniversary of the war makes Poland a meeting place, an important place in Europe. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki has recently held a series of talks with, among others, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. On Wednesday, the head of the Polish government will meet with Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala. Meanwhile, on Thursday, he will travel to Denmark. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful evening.